All right, welcome to Kabbalah Cafe. So, good morning, welcome. Kabbalah Cafe is all about looking at the deeper side of Torah and the deeper side of life. And so, I feel like speaking just for a moment about the energy of this month, which is the month of Elul. The month of Elul is, in the months of the year, it is number 12. It could also be number 13. Conceptually, if there's a leap year and there's an extra month. By the way, in the secular calendar or Gregorian calendar, as it were, I don't know why I went Gregorian. I don't know why that deserves a flourish, but nonetheless, in the Gregorian calendar, as it were, so there, when you have a leap year, you get one day. I think I'm right. Am I right here? Like February gets added like another day.
Because there are 364 and a quarter solar days for the year.
Sollish days?
Yeah. Yeah.
However, I would say like this, however, when it comes to Jewish leap years, yeah, we give you a whole month. That's it. Take a month. We got a month.
Like a bargain.
Jews like a bargain. Yeah, if you want to give me a thing, I'm going to negotiate to get a full month. So the month of Elul is the last month of the calendar year, and it's a time of Cheshbon HaNefesh, which means it's time to take stock of our inner life, of our inner dynamic, what's going on inside. I read yesterday, again, I like to try to read it every year or so, where the previous Rabbi writes about Elul in Lubavitch. You might have heard the word Lubavitch, like Chabad Lubavitch. What's Chabad Lubavitch? This is, by the way, just parenthetical. What's Chabad Lubavitch? Is it Chabad or Lubavitch? Pick a lane. Well, here's what's going on. Chabad is the philosophy, right? It's Chabad philosophy. That's like the ideology called Chabad Chacham Das, right? Lubavitch is the name of a city back in the old country where Chabad was headquartered for a long time, where it really kind of came together. So the movement was called either Lubavitch, based on the city, or Chabad, based on the philosophy. Why am I saying that? Oh, because the previous Rebbe writes about Elul this month in Lubavitch. He says when Elul would arrive, the air felt different. The air felt, it was still summer. It was still like, kind of end of summer, but it just felt different. People walked a little faster. People davened a little harder. People studied a little longer. Like everything was a little bit more stepped up. Everyone stepped up their game a little bit more in preparation for the high holidays. Today's the third day of Elul, which means 27 days to the new year, which is kind of cool. So 27 days. I think Rosh Hashanah, first day of Rosh Hashanah is a Shabbos.
Correct.
So Friday it's 4 weeks. Yeah, 4 weeks from yesterday, I guess, from Friday night. From Friday night. Yeah. So it's approaching. I only mentioned that in the context of, getting into the spirit, getting into the energy. So today I want to speak about a topic that I think many of us struggle with. I don't know if struggle is the right word, but yeah, I guess we'll stick with that word, struggle. And it's the idea of in Hebrew, it's called machshava zaros. In English, zarot. How would you translate it in English? Foreign thoughts. Foreign thoughts? What's foreign thoughts? It means anything that is distracting you from where you want your mind to be. So if you want your head to be in a certain space and there's something else that's pulling your head in a different direction, we call that machshava zaros or machshava zarot, foreign thoughts. And the question is, how do we battle that? The Alter Rebbe in Tanya, in his book called Tanya, which is the Bible of Chabad Hasidic philosophy, so he it's interesting. I'll just take a step back. The book of Tanya. Hey, Norm. Good morning. Good to see you. So the book of Tanya, he says he writes in his introduction to the book, I didn't want to write a book, and he writes all the reasons why books are no good. Books are no good because who are you writing it for? Do you know exactly who's going to pick it up? How do you know your readership? Right. Number one. Number two, the written word can be misconstrued. Right. You write something and you have one intention, and the reader reads it and they have a completely different conception of what you meant, and they can they can run with it, and it's not at all what you meant. Okay.
Like texting.
Like texting. Right. Right. Because you can't control, when you're speaking to somebody face to face, you can hope to control the message and how it's received. But when you're writing and someone's reading what you wrote, you're out of the picture. You can't defend yourself. You can't explain. There's no nuance. I mean, you can try, but he says also, people read something and they forget it soon after. It doesn't have the same impact as, a personal conversation. So his intention was never to write a book. The book of Tanya, like the book of Chabad philosophy, he said, I never intended to write it, but I had to. Why did he have to? His agent pressured him to. He was building his brand, and part of that is a book. Joking. The reason that he says he has to write it is because people would come to him for spiritual advice and counsel. He says, there's so many people that I can no longer meet with everybody and have these type of one-on-ones where I can help guide and instruct and mentor spiritually, etc. And plus, people end up, even when it comes to these verbal conversations, or these in-person meetings, people end up forgetting what I tell them, and then they come back to me again with the same question, right? And so he says, at this point, I have no choice but to write a book. So I'm writing this for the people that I know, people that know me, as a collection of guidance that I've given in the past and that I would give in the future. This is a collection of guidance that can then be read, despite the challenges and the challenges of writing a book. I'm writing it, and hopefully it'll hit the mark. That's how he kind of sets up the book of Tanya. So, right, exactly, right. So, and then he also writes, by the way, he says, since there's value in having a conversation, whenever somebody studies Tanya, certainly when they start studying Tanya, they should not do it on their own, reading from the book, because the whole point is you might miss out when you're reading from the book, but you have to study it with someone else who knows it, who studied it from someone else. In other words, it should be like a verbal, interactive, experience, and where you're learning with someone else and together, either a group or whatever it is. But it should be learned in that type of setting to ensure the accuracy and that the message is being delivered. Okay, when you read the book of Tanya, you can read it different ways. You can read it as a book. You can read it as a very elaborate, almost like a narrative, taking you from understanding what's going on inside, the struggles, to how to deal with the struggles, and then how to reach a space of love and fear of God, as he concludes the book with. So kind of taking you on this journey. But you can also read it kind of as not transcripts, but transcripts or writings about things that he would have met with somebody about, who was coming to unload what was bothering them in their soul. And so he addresses many of these really deep spiritual issues. And one of them that he addresses very strongly throughout the book is the idea where a person feels like they're not advancing in their spiritual life. They feel that they're stuck spiritually. They made advancements. They climbed in their connection and their awareness of Yiddishkeit, and they feel like they've advanced, but at this point, it's kind of stagnant. And I think we can all relate to that. Right? I think we can all relate to the advancements that we've made, this big steps that we've taken, but then also at a certain point, it kind of feels like we're maybe moving. Yeah, we plateaued. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Plateaued, maybe just moving laterally as opposed to moving up or deeper.
Or rubber banding.
What's that? Oh, going back, bouncing back. Yes. Backsliding is also a very real concern. Rabbi New said this beautiful idea recently. I don't remember where. Maybe you guys also heard it. I'll just repeat it because I thought it was a really great way of putting this. It says, for the altar, for the Mizbeach, the Torah says that in the temple altar, so it was a higher platform, and the priest had to get up there. You could not build it with steps. You could not build steps up, and you had to build a ramp. So the question is, why is a ramp better than steps? Yeah, God said so, and there's a technical reason, but what's the deeper reason? So the explanation that he gave was that when you put a ball on a ramp, it will not stay in the same place. If you put it on a step, it could stay in the same place, right? Who hasn't had the experience of trying to put a slinky down, right? Because you've seen the commercials or you've heard the legend, and you put the slinky and it goes like one step and then it stops. You're like, I'm pretty sure there's a refund coming my way.
They're on carpet.
I don't even know. Yeah, probably carpet. That's all right. I'm trying to now rethink my whole childhood. We definitely had carpeting. That was the problem. All right, but if you put something on a step, it doesn't go anywhere. It could fall down if you get enough, inertia or enough pressure. It can go down, tumble down the stairs. But I mean, otherwise things can just stay, steady on a stair. So the point is, life is not like stairs. Life is like a ramp. When you're trying to get up to God's altar, as it were, getting up to, growing spiritually, we have to know either we're going up or rubber banding, or we're going down. So at some point we might find ourselves questioning our own progress. Like, am I real? Am I legit? Am I sincere? Am I authentic? Right? Or am I a fraud? There's a psychological. I won't tell you. I told you today's class is called mind control.
Oh.
I'm now like connecting to your brain. So I think also that, there's a psychological term called imposter syndrome. You guys ever heard that? Imposter syndrome?
Yeah.
Imposter syndrome means a person believes or questions themselves and wonders, like, am I a fraud? Do I really deserve this job? Do I really deserve, am I really this person that I'm presenting myself to be? Or am I something else? And we might have that spiritually as well. Like, am I legit the person who is showing up to shul and davening and coming to study Torah and speaking, speaking Jewish ideas and spiritual ideas? Am I authentically that person, or am I putting on a show? And if I am, then what does that say about me? And so the context in which the Alter Rebbe addresses this directly is when a person is davening, because I will tell you, prayer is the hardest Jewish thing to do. I think. I mean, how hard is it to light a menorah? I don't know, not that hard, right? Eat matzah, hear the shofar. These are relatively easy. To daven is very difficult. So he addresses this. A person might think while they're davening, while they're praying, a person might be, what's the word I'm looking for? Inundated, not really inundated. A person might be distracted by distracting thoughts. And a person in that moment might think to themselves, well, wait a second, hold on. Here I am, standing before God, wrapped in my prayer shawl, perhaps, or not, right? And I'm standing before God and I'm holding the prayer book and I'm shuckling. You know what shuckling is? Shuckling is this. If you ever see me shuckling, by the way, I was one of the early Zooms that I did. This is in 2020. I gave an intro to a Yiddish course. We had a Yiddish course, professor from Emory University, Miriam Udell. By the way, she's doing another Yiddish course here in a few months. If you ever want to know how to curse someone out in Yiddish or how to kvetch in the original language, got you covered. Yiddish course. She's amazing. She's literally a Yiddish professor, author at Emory. So I gave the introduction.
So she's no shtick there.
Not at all. So I gave the introduction. I don't know why I'm making this about me, but I am. And I was for some reason I was shuckling. And I remember in the comments on the YouTube, people were like, why is the rabbi moving around so much? I'm getting dizzy. Someone's like, fast forward to the rabbi's intro. It's disorienting. I'm like, all right, fine. All right. So, but the point is, you're davening and you're shuckling and you're moving. And your soul, it's the reason why we shuckle, it's the vibration of the soul that's manifesting in the body. That's according to Kabbalah why we shuckle. It's like the flame that flickers. It's not, there's a battle, there's movement, there's energy going on. So there's movement. And then a person is distracted by completely mundane thoughts, and a person might think, seriously, what's going on here? What kind of low life am I that I can't even concentrate for 4 minutes? For 4 minutes in the Amidah and Shemona Esrei, I can't even concentrate for 4 minutes. What does that say about who I am, my spiritual standing? What does it say about, how seriously I take this whole Judaism thing? What does it say about, the study that I've done and the preparations that I've done, whether it's today or any other day? What does it say about my general standing in life? And furthermore, am I wasting my time with all this stuff? Because am I really making progress? Is my davening, my prayer getting any better? Or is it pretty much the same as it always is? I'm saying a few words that I'm thinking about, many words that I'm not thinking about, etc. And that might be the inner thought process, which can be very frustrating and could lead to a person almost, God forbid, saying, well, then forget about it. Then I'm just wasting my time. And so the Alter Rebbe counsels, and I think of it as a person who's pouring out his or her soul to their spiritual mentor. And he writes about this in the book because book was about these types of meetings. And he writes that, he says, and I'm going to use a psychological term that I know I think I'm appropriating, if that's the right word. I don't think this is the original intent of this word or the meaning of this word if you look it up clinically, but the word I'm going to use is disassociation. The Alter Rebbe encourages us to practice what we might call disassociation. What is disassociation in this context? It says like this. Imagine you were praying. Imagine you were davening. And imagine not you, not your inner head. Imagine someone else comes over to you and starts bugging you in middle of the Amidah. Like that's a faux pas. Like you don't do that. But imagine someone did. Imagine someone starts saying, "Hey, how's it going? Right? How's the prayer? Bet you can't concentrate now." No, right? Like that whole thing. Imagine that. Or someone's like, "Oh, hey, did you remember to send that email that you were supposed to send?" Or, "Hey, did you remember to pick up the milk last night?" Whatever it is. Imagine it was someone else. What would you think?
Rude.
It's rude. How dare you? Like, what's going on? You would get annoyed, you would get a little bit bugged. But here's what you wouldn't do. You wouldn't internalize it as a me problem. You would say that's a them problem, right? You say that person is the problem. They need to go so that I can get back to davening. And you would you wouldn't own the distraction. You would say there's a distraction happening. Let me wait it out or block it out and let me get back to what I need to do. But this is very rude. And so one of the major ideas of Tanya is to work on that practice of, again, I'm using this term, I'm sure it's not accurate, clinically, but this disassociation. Don't identify with that distracting voice. Recognize that although it is coming from inside, it is not necessarily, right? You don't have to define it as you. It is your animal soul. It is your evil inclination, perhaps, whatever. It's in you, but it doesn't have to be you, right? You don't have to own that voice. You can say that voice is something that Hashem, that God put inside of me, almost like that other guy who's just trying to distract me. God put that other guy inside me to provide the same challenge, to provide the same, test. Can I, block? Can I recognize that as a voice of distraction, see it, hear it, recognize it for what it is, shut the door on that voice and say, voice be gone, let me get back to what I need to do, without getting emotionally wrapped up into the whole, am I worthy? Am I spiritual? Am I a fraud? Am I an imposter? Is there any hope? Is there any progress, etc.? If I can somehow separate that voice, which is coming from a persona inside, and not own it as the totality of my being, then I have a way better shot at getting back to focus prayer and focus on what I need to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Perfect.
In other words,
are you kind of giving us a pass when that happens?
No. Well, first of all, I'm not doing anything. I'm just repeating what the Alter Rebbe says. I'm trying to authentically
give us a pass.
I think so.
Feel so badly.
I think so. But I don't think it's about not feeling bad. I think it's about being more effective in our progress. Literally in the concentration, but also more generally in our progress. Meaning like this. This is not only true in prayer. This is true in any area of our spiritual growth. If you look at Tanya if you kind of take a step back and look at Tanya, right, as a roadmap. So Tanya begins what's the word I'm looking for? Tanya begins with identifying what are the elements, what are the forces that exist within the person. You have an animal soul, you have a godly soul. The godly soul is the truth of who you are. The animal soul was put there to provide the foil. The abbot to my Costello. I don't know, did I get that right? Or the Costello to my abbot? Who is the laurel to my Hardy, as it were. In other words, there's who I am, and then there's this other force that's very real, very much in me, but I didn't create myself. That's the big idea. I didn't do that. I didn't create an evil inclination.
So you can't.
There's no point to beat myself up. In other words, why would I own, and why would I feel guilty about the fact that I have unkosher thoughts, or forget unkosher, distracting thoughts desires, temptations, etc. Why would I feel bad about that? In other words,
You didn't put it there.
I didn't put it there, number one. Number two, do I really believe that I'm a tzaddik that shouldn't have that stuff? Of course not. I'm a normal person, right? He says on the contrary, he says, the fact that you would feel guilty about that implies that you think that you should be a tzaddik, which means that's coming from a place of arrogance. Who are you to think that you shouldn't have the distracting thoughts? Why shouldn't you have them? You're a human being. Of course you have them. But the point is, be able to disassociate, just like you could differentiate. You know, this is also a very important skill when it comes to grocery shopping with a toddler, right? Think about it. You know, you're grocery shopping. That's my way of indicating that we're now pushing a shopping cart. And the kid is in the, but the one with the car. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
It's got the whole, right?
Cool.
They're they're cruising.
I have that with my kids.
Oh, it's fantastic. Sometimes they're in the front. You got the basket here. Sometimes they're here, and the basket's over there.
If they turn
different
right, will it direct?
So I always tell the kids, I always like, oh, you can't steer. So no, you can't. That sounds like I'm berating them, but like, oh, be careful. Like, anyway, the point is like this. Imagine that at somewhere in aisle 4, right? Imagine somewhere in aisle 4, there's a meltdown. Question is, how much do you internalize that as like a reflection on who you are, your parenting, your identity? It's like, oh no, my kid is crying. I must be a terrible person. So you're trying to like figure out, you know, how to make yourself look better. It's not about you. It's about the kid. What does the kid need in this moment? What does the child need? Love, a little attention, a little, I don't know, whatever it is.
The cookies,
Nah.
the cookies on the shelf.
Yeah, whatever it is, something to play, something of.
Thank you. Packaged cookies are in.
No, what Larry was suggesting is that you have a stash of Ali's cookies ready to go. You pull them out. You're good to go.
He's a rabbi.
Yes, yes.
Anyway,
Anyway, here's the point. Here's the big idea. It's always more effective to deal with a problem when it's not yours, when you can disassociate from it. I don't mean disassociation to a negative place to where you're not facing yourself, but disassociation to the extent that you can deal with it without being overwhelmed by dealing with it. That self-judgment of, you know, I'm a bad person and I'm a failure and I'm this and I'm that shame involved, all of that doesn't help us deal with the problem. So what I'm suggesting is, not what I'm suggesting, what the Alter Rebbe suggests, and what I'd like to share as we get, started today is that it's very healthy to be able to recognize the inner voices, the inner threats to our spiritual, space, and be able to say, I hear you, you're a nudnik, right? And I'm moving on. But if I think that I am a failure, then I have no chance. If I identify with that voice, then what chance do I have? Because I'm bad. I'm no good. If I'm no good, well, then I'm no good. Does that make sense?
But I don't see how if I'm davening and the people around me, which I think that was like in the women's section, talking and stuff.
They don't talk on that side, do they?
No, not at all.
And the men's side is super quiet all the time.
But
It's also on the men's side. Don't worry.
no, that's why I would say, oh, I'm a failure because I'm doing that. I don't.
No, that's what I'm saying. You would never say that.
Oh.
You would never say that. So just like you would never, perfect. No, you're right. So just like you would never say, I'm a failure when someone else is talking, so too, we shouldn't say I'm a failure when my inner voice is distracting me in my prayers. I should never say, oh, I'm no good at davening, or I'm not accomplishing anything, or my davening is worthless, or I shouldn't even bother because I can't get through a Shemona Esrei, I can't get through an Amidah, a 5-minute Amidah without 1,000 distracting thoughts. I shouldn't throw that away because of my distracting voice. Here's the point, very simply, my distracting voice is the same as someone outside bugging me. Why? Because it's not who I am. I didn't put that there. It's in other words, think about, maybe a visual is like the cartoons, the little, remember those
Angel and devil.
Angel and the devil? So don't own it. Be able to move it out almost outside of yourself and say, okay, here's a voice. It instead of coming this way, it's coming that way. but it's still a separate voice that I can choose to recognize and say, I understand why that's happening. That voice has its own, its own reality, its own mission, its own thing. But I'm not owning it. I don't have to listen to it. I can move on from it. So
Giving you a pass.
giving who a pass?
You.
No, because you're going to get back to davening. You're going to be able to get to address
And I look at it from a Hasidic angle, being I'm standing there saying Shemona Esrei, and I'm internally distracted. I'm thinking about something.
Yeah, who
at
knows,
work,
right.
When I'm finished with Shemona Esrei, it bothers me that I was distracted. So in my book, you get points for the fact that bothered you, as opposed to you just ignoring it.
Yeah, but that's like guilt points. I don't know that those points count.
But
I don't know that those
it's
points
the
count.
The connection.
I don't know. I
You
think
still have the connection to the Abishter that it bothers you.
no. I agree. The fact that we want to improve in our tefillah, want to improve in our davening. That is definitely a sign of
We don't
positivity.
get that.
Right. That is definitely a positive sign. However, I would say that beating ourselves up, I don't know. There's no, I don't think there's any utility in that. On the contrary, we can start identifying as that's who we are, and that's the best we can do. And then we get stuck in it, as opposed to being able to disassociate. So really what I want to get to today is this idea that we can be in control of our thoughts. Even when a distracting thought emerges from the subconscious, we have the ability to quiet that thought, almost to quarantine that thought, and to get rid of it and to move on to a different thought. Now, how do you get rid of thoughts? We'll talk about that soon. But it's kind of like, remember back in the day, or maybe not back in the day, you would run like a virus scanner. Remember those? And they would like, oh, we found like threats to your computer.
You guys don't do that anymore?
I don't,
You should be. You should be.
I haven't done that.
Automatic, it's in the background.
Yeah, maybe. I
Just
don't
like
know.
your thoughts.
Maybe. Oh, now we're getting somewhere. Now we're talking. Hold on one second. So here's the idea. The idea is that it would identify the risk, and then it would quarantine it, right? And then it would ask you, what do you want to do with it? You want to save it? You want to delete it? Do you want to investigate? I don't know what the other options are, but repair it. There you go. Like, what do you want to do with it? And so Kabbalah teaches, Chassidus teaches, that we have the ability when it comes to inner thoughts that kind of pop up into our consciousness from our subconscious, because there are all these things that are floating around that we're not aware of. And then there's the things that we become aware of. We call this metacognition. Metacognition is when we become aware of what we are thinking. Our minds are always thinking. Like there's always a running narrative in our heads, but we're not always thinking about what we're thinking about. Sometimes we're just thinking. Does that make sense? We're just thinking, and we're not aware of what we're thinking. But we might find ourselves, like one way to catch yourself in this is if you ever find yourself like in a good mood and you're not sure why. You ever find yourself like you feel good and you're like, what do I feel good about? You're like trying to retrace your footsteps. Like, I feel good. No, not in I shouldn't feel good. Why am I feeling good? That's a bummer, or that's
You're supposed to feel good.
I understand that.
Natural. That's
Yes.
Right. That's the
Good.
correct.
Yes, you are correct. However, sometimes you'll find yourself feeling good and you'll be like, why am I feeling good? And then you realize not that you shouldn't feel good, but that you're trying to trace like what's the cause of it. Or conversely, sometimes you find yourself not in a good mood, a little sad, a little down, whatever it is. And it also and then you're thinking, why am I sad? Why am I down? What's going on? And you think about that and try to trace where that's coming from. So you have these moments where you are, and so what happens in those moments? What happens is that you're focusing your mind to think about what you've been thinking about, right? Does that make sense? Because you've been thinking about something, but you're not really thinking about what you've been thinking about. You're just thinking. And that's been affecting your mood because the way we think affects the way we feel. And so we feel ourselves a certain way and we're like, what have I been thinking about? And then you pay attention to that thought. It's kind of like, a river is flowing on its own. And then at some point we focus in on it and we pay attention. Oh, here's what's going on. Maybe a good example would be sometimes you can have the TV on in the background, right? And you're not paying attention. And then you suddenly become aware, like, oh, let me listen to what's happening. Let me watch what's going on. Let me become aware. Let me focus in on what's playing. So the TV is always on in our heads. When I say TV, what I mean, the thought, like thoughts are always, our mind is always processing. There's always
There's
thinking.
no way to, Kabbalah have
Can't-
any way to turn it off?
No, we don't want to turn it off. No, the mind is always going. By the way, even when it comes to meditation, Eastern meditation is about clearing the mind. Clearing the mind.
Not shut.
Jewish, not sure. No. Well, I don't know. But Jewish meditation is not about clearing the mind or trying to quiet the mind. On the contrary, it's about focusing the mind on a thing, which is a different, it's why it's called hitbonenut, which means focused thought. It's not really the same as Eastern meditation, but that's really another conversation for another time. The point is that the mind is always going, and that's a good thing. The problem is who's in control of those thoughts. So what happens is that we have all these, again, the way it's explained in Tanya and Kabbalah Chassidus, is that we have these forces inside, and the forces are kind of pushing information, pushing in the background. In the background, it's pushing. It's like when your phone pushes your emails to your device. Remember back in the day, sometimes you had to pull your email to your device. Remember that? You had to like hit a button, you had to pull. It's like you hit a button and then the emails arrive. But then they have the technology advanced, and then it just pushes the emails to your device. So even when you're not actively, pulling it, it's being pushed. So our subconsciousness is pushing stuff to our conscious mind all the time. And we have two inner forces. We have the inner force or voice of the godly soul and of the animal soul, and both are pushing. And oftentimes it's the animal soul and the evil inclination that's pushing stuff, and the stuff that it's pushing is usually not in our best interest. It's not healthy stuff.
Louder too.
It's louder and it's not healthy. It's not even physically right. It's not physically healthy. It's not spiritually healthy. There's no health there at all. But it's pushing these things in our mind. The negative thoughts, sad thoughts, the self-destructive thoughts, destructive other thoughts, etc. And so Kabbalah teaches, and Chassidus really brings down and formulates this idea that when it comes to these types of thoughts, the way to deal with it, the first step is to recognize that we are in control. We can be in control of our thoughts. We can't actually turn off the mind. What we can do is redirect our thoughts. We can't quarantine the negative thought and blow it up. What we can do is redirect our thoughts. It's almost like you have a train going down a track, and you're you're somebody, and you can pull the lever, and you're the engineer. There you go, and it can change. Well, no, whoever's on the tracks, I guess, also.
He's
the switch, right? You pull the thing, and then the switch operator, and then the train can go down either this path or this path, and you can change it. And so in our minds, it's the same thing. We have the ability to switch where our minds are headed and what we're thinking about. It requires a lot of practice. And the practice begins with, okay, what do I want to think about? It's about consciously being aware of and intentionally being aware of what am I thinking about and what do I want to think about, and then pushing my desire to think about something into my consciousness, and then allow that to take hold. If I am if I'm sitting back passively and allowing whatever subconscious is brewing, is bubbling to come into my consciousness, the problem is that I am now a victim of, or I'm allowing myself to be the victim of that voice, right? That in that example of that outside voice, it's now the inside voice, but I'm allowing that voice to come in. Whereas if I have the metacognition where I'm aware of what I'm thinking, I'm not just thinking, but I'm aware of what I'm thinking, then I can say, oh, hold on 1 second. Here's where my thought is now. I don't want to be here. I want to be somewhere else. Let me move to that place. Not judge myself for the negative thought or the distracting thought, because that judgment is not helpful in the process of switching the tracks. There's no judgment. It's just noticing, recognizing that this is an undesirable thought or not the most optimal thought in this moment, and then supplanting it, or then smoothly redirecting it into switching the track into where I do want to go with my thoughts. But it requires a level of self-awareness. Again, I'm using this term, metacognition. It means not just cognition, but metacognition. It means not just awareness, but awareness of your awareness. What am I being aware of? What am I thinking about? I'm thinking all the time, but what am I thinking about? And so number one, it requires paying attention to our thoughts. And then number two, the practice, it's all from practice, the practice to consciously based on our own volition, our own choice, change what we are thinking about in this moment. I can have, I'm not speaking necessarily myself, but one could have in their repertoire 5, 10, 15, 20 thoughts to pull out in any given situation. So if I find myself in a negative, and I might notice that only based on how, I might notice that first by how I feel. I might feel a little not in the best place, however you define that, right? You might feel a little off. And then that might be that might be the trigger, that might be the sign. Oh, hold on one second. What am I thinking about? Where's my head? Because my head's just been running, but let me slow that down. And what am I really thinking about? It's like slowing it down. Okay. My head is in a distracted place. Let me pull out, the ideas that I want to think about, the things that I find to be healthy, positive, uplifting, spiritually connective, right, purposeful, etc. I'm going to pull out those thoughts, and then that's going to really rewire what's going on. Tony writes, sounds like martial arts. You can't control what pops out at you, but you can redirect. Mental judo. Exactly. It's about mental judo. Judo is where you take the energy of the person and you kind of flip it. Did I get that right?
You use the energy.
You use the energy
to your advantage.
To your advantage. Good. Use it and then you redirect it. That's the same thing over here. If you're going to try to stop the train, if you're going to try to say, oh, let me stop my mind from thinking this, that's not going to work. You can't stop. How can you stop that?
What about the opposite?
Which is?
You get in your car to drive from point A to point B, and you show up at point B. You don't even remember going from A to B because you had so many other thoughts in your head.
Yeah, I mean, depends what the thoughts are. It could be fine.
But you know what I'm saying?
Of course I know what you're saying. Absolutely. Could that also happen in davening? You find yourself at Elenu and you're like, how
did I get here?
Funny meeting you here at the end of prayer services. Mind, welcome back, right? Sometimes we do that. That happens. We're human. We're not tzaddikim. That's the way we are. The point is, when we find ourselves, it could be a benign example. Maybe that's fine. Not the davening piece. Maybe, you find yourself at work and oh, how did I get here? What was I thinking about? I don't even remember. But now we're getting the day started, and that could be fine. But the point is, when we notice that internally we don't feel like we're in a good space, that's a good signal to check in with ourselves within our heads. Metacognition, not cognition. That's easy. That's what I'm thinking about.
There's nothing to do with Facebook, though, when you say meta.
No.
Okay.
No. Or Twitter/X.
Whatever.
No, nor the cage match. Nothing.
That's why I got to ask,
Yeah, just got to clarify. So the point is that when I find myself a little bit in a not in a disconnected space, I check in with my thoughts. What am I thinking about? And then identify, where I am in my head. And I can then choose, again, on a good day, if all goes well, I can then choose what it is that I am thinking about. Make sense? Yes?
Yeah.
Good?
Everyone agree?
This is what we call mind control. What's pshat? What's pshat? What does mind control mean? Doesn't mean controlling someone else's mind. Come on.
That's what I thought the class was for.
No.
I was going to make people buy more cookies.
Not bad. All right. That's good. But maybe. Oh, smart cookie. All right, look, here's the deal. Mind control is not about anyone else. Mind control in Kabbalah is being in control of our own minds. Step one is, there's a few steps. Step one is recognizing, disassociating, right? I don't have to internalize that. This is who I am. I'll always be this. I'm stuck. No, you're not stuck, right? Number one, you are the arbiter. You are the judge. You have a choice in this scenario. There's a voice, but you have a choice. So number one, regain control of the situation. Number one. Number two, check in with yourself. What am I thinking about? Do I like what I'm thinking about? Is this good or not good? As you determine, is this healthy or unhealthy for me in this moment to be thinking about this or not? Step three, if you recognize that the thought that you're thinking is not the thought that you want to be thinking, do not, under any circumstances, attempt to stop the thought. You will fail. You cannot stop a thought. What you can do is redirect the thoughts. In other words, pull out from your file that you have ready to go, pull out a thought, a meditation, a happy memory, whatever there's a great letter from one of the Chabad rabbis. where he writes to somebody who was really struggling with negative thoughts. And by the way, this person had a very good reason for having negative thoughts. They had a very terrible medical condition or diagnosis that they were dealing with, and they had extremely negative thoughts, like really negative thoughts, and there was a lot of struggle. And the Rabbi writes, I forget which one, he writes essentially to have positive thoughts in your toolbox. And he says clearly they don't have to be spiritual. They don't have to be Jewish thoughts. They just have to be positive. Find positive memories, experiences. I'm going to put words in his mouth. He didn't say this. I'm saying this. A sunset, a vacation, a Grand Canyon, whatever, a memory, a simcha, something positive, and have that at the ready when you catch yourself in a negative space, right? Like thinking negative thoughts, heading down that negative path, pull out that thought. The more you practice that, the stronger you'll get with that. In other words, the more we practice willful mindfulness, which is really hit bonanut, right? It's like I'm focused on a thought of my choosing. It's simply what it is. So the more we do that, the ease, I don't know if it's easy, but
I'm going to put this class in my file. I'm going to pull this class out.
good.
Negative or positive.
Oh, there you go. Good. Good.
No locks for you next week.
All the locks. By the way, yeah. All right. So that's the big idea. The big idea here is about mind control. And so and again, it's a few step process. It's about recognizing that we could be in control, because it's not the totality of who we are. So we can be in control of this external factor almost. Oh, so the big idea here is give me one. So I don't think I emphasize this enough. So I think all of us recognize that when it comes to behavior, we're in control. We don't have to do that, or even speech. But our thoughts, sometimes we think, I have no control over my thoughts. I can't. How can I control my thoughts? It's so internal. It's so ever present. My head is always running. How could I ever be in control? And the point of today, and then we're going to read inside in just a moment, the point of this opening is to say that you and I absolutely can be in control, even of our thoughts. For sure, our speech, you don't have to say anything. You just be quiet. For sure, action, you can do or not do this or do that. You have the choice. But even when it comes to something seemingly as, omnipresent as our thoughts, it's like, I don't know if that's the right word, but they're always flowing. They're always there. You can't shut off your mind. You feel like it's out of control, like your mind is taking you into different places. Even with thought, with machshava, even with thought, you and I have the absolute power to modify that. And by the way, one of my favorite ideas, if you take the Hebrew word machshava and you reorganize a few of the letters, it spells the word bisimcha, joy, being in a state of joy. Machshava, bisimcha shares the same Hebrew letters. What's the idea? Reorient the letters of thought. In other words, reorient your thoughts and you will be happy. Happiness is so often driven by what is in our heads. If we can reorganize our machshava, we can reach a state of bisimcha. A lot of times, happiness or the opposite is not driven by, not driven by external, stuff, dynamics. It's about an internal way of how we look at things. Yeah.
So the idea that we have those two forces within us, and not in it, and all that kind of stuff. So when you're trying to implement that, which this makes great sense, and the other side kind of realizes what you're doing as well. And like when you have the thought about like you're praying and like, oh, I forgot to send that email, I didn't go to the grocery, so I was like, I'm going to deal with you later. It's like, I know what you're doing, you're redirecting me, but you really need to deal with that. And so it sounds very
And now there's
but in real life, your mind is where it's all going. It's not an outside. The outside is actually easier because once you divert away from that, it's outside of you. But it's an internal thing.
But the reverse is true too. Good thoughts, you've got to be careful that when your mind is in the right place, that it doesn't lead to evil thoughts.
True.
So that's a redirection.
That's also redirection. But let's deal with this first, because this is what you're asking, and I'm just to restate what you're asking to make sure I got it. What you're asking is, well, one second. This sounds a little bit oversimplified, because if you have, let's say, a distracting thought, and then you say, I'm going to redirect my thought. The distracting thought is going to say, not so fast. Whereas the more you redirect, the more it's going to say, but. But look at me. Look at my distracting thought. And now you're dealing with a full-on brawl in your brain.
And you're in the emotional.
And and then you're the one, right? Then you're the one that's trying to figure out. There's an old Hasidic story. There were many Hasidic groups. A lot of them kind of developed. So there was the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, and then the Maggid Mizrich. Then he had a number of students, each of which started their own Hasidic movement, really. One of them was the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad, but there were many others. And then they branched and forked, and that's why there's so many different Hasidic groups. But there were two, I don't remember which two. One of them famously davened really fast, and one of them davened really slow. And there was once a chassid, a student of the school of thought of the slow daveners, who went to someone who was of the fast davener, movement, and said, "Why do you guys daven so fast?" It's like they were like blitzing through the prayers. Like, why so fast? He said, because imagine you're on a train and you have, robbers trying to get onto the train, trying to hijack the train. You got to move really fast. You got to gun it to get away from that. So when we start davening, the next thing you know, you have hijackers and trying to infiltrate. So you got to move and get to the end before they catch up. The other chassid said, that's exactly why we daven slow. You know why? Because what happens if the robbers already got onto the train? Then you have to stop the train, duke it out, get rid of them, and then do it again, and then keep on going. So it's davening from that perspective is a slower process where you're dealing with the problem, clearing that out, progressing, dealing with it again, progressing. So it's kind of a start, stop, and a slower process.
And then came the train schedule.
Right. And then came the automobile. and now what? Now we don't even know.
6:30 fit by, you got to be done.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So there are different schools of thought, like how to deal with it. So you're right. You're saying that it could end up where there's now an internal brawl. The second school of thought would say, wait it out. In other words, deal with that. How long is that going to go on for? All right. It's going to go on for what? I don't know, 30 seconds, 40 seconds. I don't know, hopefully not longer. You deal with it, you clear some space. When I say clear some space, kind of move out the negativity, kind of try to recenter and keep on going. You might not get through, the whole Amidah. You're not going to get through the whole Shemona Esrei, maybe in the same time as you would ordinarily without doing that. But again, there's two ways to do it. Either you try to gun it, pedal to the metal, and try to get through it before it gets too distracting, or you deal with it slowly. Maybe during the week we have to go fast, and we're not always going to get this perfectly right. But these are some techniques that are helpful. Shabbat is a good time to daven a little bit more slowly and to be able to to work on this, on this battle. But I think the more that we practice this type of approach, which is to feel it, to recognize it, to identify what it is, to then pull out the thoughts that we want to have and then kind of redirect. I think the more we practice that, the better we get at it. We're not going to get perfect, and we're certainly not going to stop those thoughts from popping into our mind. That we're never going to stop. There will always be distracting thoughts. That's what the Alter Rebbe says. Like, don't think that I should reach a place, after a certain number of years where I'm not going to have this challenge anymore. That's not going away. But the key here is to have the tools to be able to get past that and to get back to a better place. And then maybe it's going to happen again. Maybe it's for sure going to happen again. It's so interesting. I was at a Fabrengen on Thursday night. We have this yeshiva for the local teenagers, like 14 to 19 years old, and these are kids that are usually away in yeshiva, but now they're back home for a few weeks in the summer. So instead of not having a structure or a seder, like a organized learning, so we're providing them for a half a day, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m., providing an opportunity for them to study some Torah. And I thought it was, so Thursday night, we had a little farbrengen at Rabbi Jacobson's house, and he was recalling some stories of one of his teachers in yeshiva, whose name was Rabbi Akiva Wagner. Rabbi Akiva Wagner was the head of the yeshiva in Toronto. I say was because a few months ago he passed away. Young. He was a young guy, passed away from cancer. And tragic. He was sick for a number of years. And he was so beloved by the students. He was really like on a different level. This guy was like the real deal. But Rabbi J, I never studied in that yeshiva. I never really interacted with him personally. I heard the legend, but I never. Rabbi Jacob said that you would see him on Shabbos, and his davening, you could tell there was a struggle going on. Like you could see there was energy. There was movement happening. It wasn't just he davened. It's not just he davened for a long time and said every word out loud and with even a Hasidic tune, but there was you could sense the struggle, you could sense the battle. And I thought that was very beautiful, to hear that recollection. All right, so what I want to do now for the next few minutes is go inside. We have to dust these off. Finally, right? It's been a while. Now with all of the last month of introductions, we can finally jump into our text. And I'm going to put this up on the screen as well for everybody. There you go. This is yours. Thank you. Please take, maybe I gave you two, but it's okay also.
This is thick.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Are they autographed?
there's extra, yes.
The last prayer, doesn't it say something about your thoughts?
Yeah, there's something about thoughts.
Something
Something like that. Yeah. There's definitely a reference. There's definitely a reference. Okay, I'm gonna pull this up on the thing here. We are up to chapter 3 on page 28. We're going to read a little bit. We're going to cover some ground today because a lot of this stuff we have talked about outside, but let's read it inside. It's really beautiful. Again, the main theme that I wanted to convey today is how to deal with thoughts, believe in ourselves that we have the ability to deal with it, not to judge ourselves by our thoughts, but to view them as, create a bit of a distinction between ourselves and our thoughts, and that way be empowered to become aware, to deal with it effectively, and to move forward in our spiritual activities. Okay, so with this in mind, let's jump into chapter number 3. All right, here we go. Tzaddikim and Beinanim. And tzaddikim are people that don't struggle. Beinanim are everybody else. In other words, all of us. Sorry, unless you're a tzaddik, in which case, keep on keeping on. Well, yeah, but
Russia's still a Bainani.
yeah, but Russia's a potential Bainani. Basically, Russia is when you slip, but Bainani is where we're striving. Where we're striving to be Bainani. Yes. Well, yeah. Behavioral tzaddik, psychological Russia. So that's where the Bainani. That's why he's in the middle, because he's got on behavioral level he's like the tzaddik, but internally he's like the Russia. It looks the same on the inside. So he says, chapter 3, the Torah is eternal and applicable to everyone. Which, by the way, we spoke about that a few weeks ago. The eternality of Torah, and how every part of Torah has a physical side, but also a spiritual side, and the spiritual side is that part of Torah that is absolutely ever present and eternal. It follows then back inside. It follows then that the fact that the Torah also tells of the sending of Moses' spies to scout out the entire land is an eternal lesson to every Jew, even one who is not on the level of Moses. Because the Torah tells us about how Moses sent out spies and how those spies actually failed in their mission, but he sent them out to scout out the entire land of Israel. So the Rebbe says in this mimer, in this discourse, that has to be, because it's in Torah, it must be a message for you and I. It's not a history book. Torah is not telling us what happened 300 years ago. Torah is telling us about how to live our lives today. So if it's here, if it's in Torah, then it is relevant to us. And here's how he frames it. We can understand this by introducing a concept discussed in Tanya regarding tzaddikim and beinanim. Tzaddikim are perfect inside and out. Beinanim are imperfect inside, working on perfection on the outside. The divine service of the Beinonim involves primarily the garments of the soul, thought, speech, and deed. That is why, by the way, just this is me speaking, that's why I focused today's discussion on thought, because a Beinoni is working on themselves to be able to recognize what is healthy, what is unhealthy, to recognize the unhealthy thoughts, words, and actions as they are unhealthy, and then to deal with them, to address them. I think, again, my understanding, maybe it's filtered through my own experience, is that action is conceptually at least the easiest, because but don't do the wrong thing. That could be, just don't remember that campaign? Just say no. Like, just don't do it. And I'm not oversimplifying, but that's speech is also just don't say it. Don't say the not nice thing. Thought is a little bit more difficult, but the Beinoni works on that as well. The Beinoni is aware of the power of thought and aware of the need to be metacognitive and aware of what he or she is thinking, and then to address it, as we said today, up until now, in a strategic way. I have my thoughts that I can pull out. I know what to look for within my own mood. I know what to pay attention to. I know when I'm feeling a little off, that it's probably something in my head. I'm going to become aware of that, figure out where my head is at, and then supplant it with something positive. Maybe I have to pull something out and study it and read it or watch it or listen to it, music, dance, whatever it is, to get myself back in a better space. That's a Beinoni. Beinoni is working on themselves in thought, speech, and deed. Let's continue. Thus, the rank of Beinoni is the rank attainable by every man. Interesting, right? So just to point out what he says over here is that the Beinoni is attainable by every person, right? So Arlene, to your point, not that everyone is a Beinoni, which you said correctly, but everyone is at least potentially on that path toward Beinoni status, which means that they're in that space. They're in the movement. Beinoni is attainable for everybody, which means that doesn't matter what's going on inside. Doesn't matter what's popping in your head or what you want to do or what you want to say or what you want to think about. None of that is relevant. What's relevant is, are you in control of when rubber meets the road, in action, in speech, in thought? Can you take the reins in that moment? Can you redirect, etc.? That's where it comes into play. Let's continue. And he explains it here. For even when a person's heart craves and desires some material pleasure, the Beinoni is capable of restraining himself or herself and controlling the drive of his heart's lust by not allowing it to find expression in deed, speech, or thought, which he explains thought in the parentheses. What does that mean, to not find expression? It doesn't mean that it's not going to pop into your brain. It means, i.e., not to willingly think about his desire, which means that when it comes to your mind, you're able to, what do we say, mental judo, you're able to move it away, or Kabbalistic judo, and think about something else, to the extent of being able to divert his mind from it entirely. That is the holy grail, to mix metaphors. That is the holy grail of mind control. The holy grail of mind control is not to stop a thought from coming in. That's unattainable. The holy grail, the goal of mind control is diversion, is to have the ability to divert the mind to some other direction. Now that's a Beinoni. Let's continue inside. The service of tzaddikim, on the other hand, perfectly righteous individuals, primarily involves the emotions of the heart, love, and fear of God. That person doesn't struggle with behavior or speech or thought. That person is just in that space of love and fear of God. And let's continue on the page 30, not every person merits this level of service. In fact, most people do not. For man does not have that much jurisdiction over matters governed by the heart. So to say that we should be in control of our hearts, that means to be in control not of how we feel, but be in control of our subconscious desires. Good luck. Be in control of like the deep stuff on the inside. Wow, that's very ambitious, and that's probably not attainable for every person. Nevertheless, listen to this. An oath is administered to every Jew, exhorting him, be a tzaddik, meaning that every person must, to some extent, attempt to involve himself also in the mode of service of tzaddikim, as explained at length in Tanya. So as we conclude chapter 3, what he says over here is powerful, and that is that even though what is most immediately within every person's control is to be in control of your actions, of your words, of your thoughts. And we spoke at length about thought today. So even though that's the arena that you and I could be most effective in, we also have an oath. We quoted this a few weeks ago. We actually read from the Talmud. The Talmud says, before the soul is paired, well, it's already paired, it's already designated, but before it actually goes into the body and before birth, the soul is given an oath, and the oath and the soul is the angels tell the soul, you have to promise, be a tzaddik. Be a tzaddik. Tzaddik? I should be a tzaddik. How am I going to be a tzaddik? The point is that after we've worked on, or in concert with working on our action, our words, and our thoughts, we also should work on cultivating our inner landscape as well. And that means to try to cultivate a little bit more love of God, a little more fear of God. When I say fear of God, it's not in a negative way like be afraid, but it's more of being in awe of Hashem and being in a sense, having a sense of reverence. The point here, though, is that the work that we do on the outside does not take away from the work that we need to do on the inside. There's the outer work, and then there's the inner work. The outer work is thought, speech, and action. Even though thought seems like inside, it's really the outside of the inside. But then there's the inside of the inside, the subconscious. And he's saying here that even though you and I are likely not going to ever reach the status of a tzaddik, but we still have to try to be tzaddik-esque. And just to reiterate what we've said a few weeks ago, it means in very simple terms, there are certain things, let's say Jewishly, that you love. Here's the question. Like certain mitzvahs that you love doing. Here's the question. Can you take one more mitzvah that right now you do, but maybe you don't love? You do it, but do you love it? I don't know. And move that to the place of love, right? Can you take one more good deed that you do, one more arena of connection, and make that into a love, make that into something that you really feel passionately about? Conversely, can you take an area in which you've struggled with and make it to the point where you no longer want that anymore? Like an area that we should stay away from, no longer want that anymore. This is where we become a tzaddik. We take steps kind of in the space of a tzaddik. No, we're not wholesale loving all good things and hating all bad things. We're not like a tzaddik that has no desire in any other space. The question is really, can we move it one more? Can we move the needle one more degree? Can we find one more area, one more mitzvah, one more Jewish observance that we fall in love with? Can we fall out of love with one area that we shouldn't really be in love with? That's the question. And the message from today's lesson is, hey guys, hey Alex, so good to see you. Hey. So the message of today's lesson is, that's a treat. The message of today's lesson is that we have the ability to not only be in control of our action, of our speech, or even our thoughts, which we spent most of the discussion on, but you and I also have the ability and the calling, moreover the calling, to move the needle a drop, to love one more Jewish thing, right? It's the month of Elul. We have, I'm just giving an example, like a suggestion maybe. We have there's an old Hasidic custom in this month to say 3 extra chapters of Psalms every day. 3 extra chapters of Psalms. It's fairly short. Yeah, from the first day of Elul, you do 1, 2, 3. The second day of Elul, 4, 5, 6. Today would be, because the third day of Elul, 7, 8, 9. The way I do it is you just take the day of the month, multiply by 3, and that's your last, right? So the 10th day would be 30, 29, and 28. That's how my head works with the math. Anyway, the point is, let's say that's a good custom. Which it is, right? That's a good custom because it starts beginning of Elul and you finish it after Ne'ilah. Yeah, after Ne'ilah, after the shofar blowing at Ne'ilah and Yom Kippur, then you do the last 9, and it's kind of so you feel like kind of part of this, this magical experience, this continuum from the beginning of this month all the way through the end of the Yom Kippur service. you feel like you've been working towards something, working toward a goal, and it's only 3 chapters a day. When I say only, it's like a page and a half. It's really not that much of a time investment.
Well,
But
some of them are.
yeah, or yeah, no, true, no, fair. Some are longer, some are shorter, but it takes, you read it whatever language you're familiar with. You can read it in English. It takes, I don't know, 5 minutes. It shouldn't take longer than 5 minutes, less. So that's a beautiful observance. It's a Hasidic custom, and it really makes the holiday season come alive. So here's the question. The question is, can we fall in love with that? Can we appreciate that? Not just do it because we have to do it. Not just coerce ourselves to do it, right? Like white knuckling it, like I'm gonna do it, but like to do it like a tzaddik would do it. Do it with passion. Do it with love, right? It could be interpersonal relationships. Can I speak to my family members more lovingly? Not because I should, but because I want to. So falling in love with something that positive, and at the same time falling out of love with something that we shouldn't do, and whatever that is for you, that is for you. So that's the message of today's class: is be a tzaddik. Be a tzaddik. We're not going to be wholesale tzaddik, not all across the board, but in one area, one small step. When they landed on the moon, what was the phrase? One small step for man, and one giant step for mankind. And by the way, he 7, 8, 9. You have an app?
No,
I have a great app. It's Hebrew only, but I'm sure there's a lot of great apps. So, I have the Siddur app. Well, I have also an Android phone. I don't have an Apple. I have a Siddur. I have the Chabad Siddur and the Chabad Tehillim.
Chabad Siddur, but it doesn't have Tehillim in it.
I have an app called Tehillat Hashem, which is the Chabad Siddur, and Tehillim, which is Tehillim.
So
I can show you what it looks like.
You have a different app than that one?
Yeah, I think this is only Android. Anybody have Android here? Oh,
You have one that tracks the right Tehillim that you need to set between Lul and.
this one. So let me see. So Tehillim for 3 chapters of El. It's got a tab. It takes you right there.
Under which one? Siddur?
No, on my Tehillim app. I'll show it to you right after the class. You'll see. No. This one just says Tehillim.
But this is yours is just pink, right?
Oh, yes. Right. Good point. Yes. Okay. After the class, we'll do some show and tell. You can take a look at that. All right. So in conclude, yes.
So when you start out doing something, then you start out because you have to, but
Right.
then you eventually
Appreciate it.
gradual and you
Sure.
appreciate it becomes natural.
Yeah. And I think that's powerful because, it says in the Talmud, a person should always do something for maybe ulterior motives, and eventually you'll do it for the right reason, which means that even if at first you're doing it because you have to, because your mother told you to, whatever it is, right? For all sorts of reasons, eventually hopefully we grow into it and appreciate it. All right. So here is, all right, there's a few questions in the chat that I want to address soon, but we'll formally close it out and then we'll address the questions. So in conclusion, as I started today's class, let's feel the energy of Elul and be inspired internally to, number one, be in control of our thoughts, or to exercise all the steps of metacognition and then control that we spoke about before, and then also to work on ourselves in the inside, to love the things that ought to be loved, or at least one more thing that ought to be loved in a positive way, and to not love the things that should not be loved, and to move into that space. And with this, we are honoring the energy of Elul and really bringing it into our lives, because the energy is there. In Lubavitch, you could feel it. In Atlanta, we can recreate it. Each one of us on our own, taking the steps that we need to take and making advancements. All right, thank you for joining me this morning for Kabbalah Cafe. It is great to see you all. And our online crew, it's great to see you guys. A few quick announcements. So tomorrow night, we have a thoroughly inspiring event. It's called the Honey Girl of Auschwitz, and it features a Holocaust survivor who is flying in today from Arizona. She lives in, what city does she live in? She lives in Prescott. She lives in Prescott, Arizona, and she's coming in with her daughter. She's 95, and she's coming with her daughter.
Are you picking
And
them up?
I Yes.
What time?
I'm not sure. I have to check the flight details.
Because I'm going to the airport from here 2:45, dropping off at the airport.
Really?
Yes.
All right.
So if it's
I'll let you know at the
anywhere
time.
around 3:15.
I'll let you know about timing. Thank you for mentioning that. All right. So she's coming in today. And then she will be speaking tomorrow night. The program begins at 7:30. Doors open at 7. It's taking place right here in the synagogue. Join us, spread the word. I've been inviting, I reached out to the high school at AJA High School. I reached out to CTeen here locally to spread the word for teens, because I feel like the opportunities that they have, the younger people have, to hear directly from a survivor who, with recollection of, what happened, personal experience, that opportunity is certainly very precious, and even more precious as the years go on. And, we have, please God, we're going to have a nice representation, and looking forward to, hopefully you guys can make it. And I know many of you already signed up. So please join us tomorrow night at 7:30 for that experience. Also, this Shabbat, coming up is Shabbat out of Africa, where we have a chazan, a cantor, coming in to entertain us and to sing and to add to the service. My brother-in-law, yes, I'm biased. He's the best chazan ever. He also sings opera. He's a performer. He's incredible. He's a lot of fun. By the way, he's not like one of those stuffy chazanim. We're like,
Does he have fancy glasses like the last chazan we had?
No, not
Those
that fancy.
fair-
Yeah. I know exactly what you no. But he'll be here.
Is he a
This
better chazan?
So yeah, he's like he's legit. Not that like it wasn't, but he's been the biggest synagogue in South Africa, or one of the biggest ones. He was chazan there for 15 years. He is quite the performer, and we have a beautiful Friday night dinner with South African themed cuisine. That's going to happen Friday night, so please join us for that as well. And throughout Shabbat, there's going to be a lot of fun and learning and connection. So a lot of stuff going on this week.
Tomorrow night can be Zoom, but just
Tomorrow night is not Zoom. Yeah, we're going to record it, but it's not.
like my grandkids. But
Yeah.
Rabbi,
right. Well, ask for the yes. Hi, Ray.
can we pay at the door? I don't do well with filling in.
Ray, I feel like you're already RSVP'd. I think.
Well, I tried to. I didn't think.
I think you're in. I think you did for 3. I think we have you.
Okay.
I remember seeing that. I could be wrong, but I recall. You know what? Let me check quickly. Let's see what we got. All right. Thanks all for coming out. We'll see you guys. Have a wonderful day.
Can you read it?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Beautiful class.
Oh, pleasure. Great to see you. Great to see Alex. By the way, Rosh Chodesh, we just had Rosh Chodesh El a few days ago.
Yeah, Yom Tzedakah was.
I was thinking about you. King is in
Yeah,
the energy, giving, generosity, love. It's beautiful.
yeah, Yom Tzedakah.
Amazing. Okay, Ray, here's what I have for you. Ray, I have you in for 3. I got you. You're in. You got
Okay.
yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, you'll get
Great.
it today with all the details about tomorrow night.
Wonderful.
You are good. You're golden. All right. Great to see everybody.
Rabbi,
Oh yeah, I saw your question. So here we go.
you can that's probably a deep question. We can think about it, answer that later. But also question about Tanya.
Yes.
Is this something where can we do a study session? I don't know if we have time, or is there another way for me to do like a virtual?
Yeah. So here are 2 options for Tanya. So number 1, I am planning on starting a Tanya class. Oh, we used to have a Tanya class, to restart it after January. So in other words, after the other new year, to start a Tanya series. That's number 1. Number 2 is if you don't want to wait, then you can go to, I would Google Chabad.org and then put in the word Tanya, and they have a special a section on the website that's all about the study of Tanya, which includes videos and audio and essays. it's really robust, and you can choose it by the chapter. I think, like, you can go chapter 1 and then see all the resources in chapter 1. But there's a lot. I haven't checked like that super recently, but there's, I don't know, at least a half a dozen different classes that you can watch or listen to, maybe even a dozen of like really gifted, presenters and teachers that on Tanya. So, you can definitely get started right
Okay,
away.
I found it on the website.
Yeah. And there might even be, I don't know if Chabad.org has this. I know they might even have an app where you can just watch it on your phone. Or maybe you just have to go to the website on your phone. They might have an app. I'm not sure if Chabad.org has a Tanya, a self-contained Tanya app, but definitely there's a lot of resources. And what I would suggest is, listen to a few of them and see which style you like, because everyone teaches it in a different style, and then jump in.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, then for the
It's hard to learn on it's hard to learn on your own. Like for anybody, it's the Tanya is like a bit of a denser book. So
and then for the question I asked, we can talk about it offline, because I know that can be a very long discussion.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this thought came to me. I think it's very healthy. I think it's very healthy to be able to know that this is your thought, but not you. I think that is very healthy. Like the way we talk about behavior, like this is a behavior, but this is not like when we think about someone else, someone is acting out, like that's their behavior, that we don't say that that's them. They are a bad person, but that the behavior needs to be corrected. And that disassociation is very healthy in dealing with others, but also dealing with ourselves. And I think in this way, I think it's the hardest is thought, because it's most in our head, and we feel like, well, that's who I am, right? If I'm thinking about it, that's literally who I am. And the answer is not exact, doesn't have to be. We don't have to look at it that way. But yeah, I'll think about that. And yes, Dr. Maxey.
So, what was the name of the Tehillim app again? Because I've got the Chabad.org daily study app, but the Tehillim that it brings up for today is chapters 18 to 22.
Yes. So here you see, this is what it looks like, Tehillim. But it's all in Hebrew. But here's the thing. Here's the thing, that what you're seeing is correct, because every day of the month there is also a series of chapters of Tehillim, of Psalms, that you would recite for that day.
So this would be like corresponding to the Gregorian calendar. 18
Well, no. It's all the it would all be the Jewish calendar, but there's a division of chapters for the days of the month. But this is on top of that. There's also 3 a day for the high holiday season that we only add this time.
Got it. Okay. Now
so
I
you do the 18 through 22 or whatever it is as part of day 3 of Elul, but as day 3 of Elul, you would also do 7, 8, and 9.
Got it.
So this app that I have, I'll show you what it looks like when I open it up. So if you can see that, it's okay. So I can't see that. So the middle bar is Tehillim for 3 Elul, and then 2 bars down is 3 chapters for Elul. So those are really 2 different things. The standard monthly,
Got it. Okay.
And if you look over here, it's 18. But you can just do the math if you want to just do it that way. It's easy.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I got it.
Work backwards. All right. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Great to see you, Larry, Ellen, Matt, Dr. Maxey. Great to see you guys. Shavua Tov. See you soon.
Shavua Tov.
Take care.